And that was one of, I would say, my first racist experiences in my face. Ooh, I shook. I said, okay, I'm just trying to help. You know, you still have to be kind and polite towards a client. You know, often when we talk about inheritance, we think inheritance, we hear inheritance. We often tend to just allude to property, money, especially those things. It's material. But as I've lived through life, I've come to realize that there's a lot more to inheritance than material, than tangible things, than properties and all those things. There is value that you can inherit, either from your parents, from those that went before you, from those that you've been around and all that. But so for me, that is probably the greatest form of inheritance that I've come to embrace. And I thank God for life, which has taught me all that. We hear that experience is the best teacher. I've experienced so much over the last 50 plus years that has taught me that. And I'm still learning, but at least for now I can say without any doubt that value, and especially the value of service, is the greatest inheritance that my mother and my grandmother left in me. My name is Rosemary Nzembi, and I grew up in a small village called Matitani in eastern Kenya, without much to look forward to, except just to wake up, go play, go to school, mostly barefoot, a lot of times without food. I know it might not show now, but I do know the reality of going without food. I know the reality of going to school barefoot with torn clothes, uniform that is patched in the back. But I thank God for the two women that gave me the courage to keep going. My grandmother, for one, I know it's one woman and probably the only person that I've known all my life who sacrificed a lot just to make sure that my brother and I and a few other cousins that were growing along with us had the very basics in life, even if it meant just one meal a day, mostly just boiled beans and maize. Often the beans were few and fine between the maize, so it was mostly maize. And then again, there would be pumpkins and some of the things that actually back then were considered food for the poor, because it only grew in the fields and you didn't even have to plant. It's like the goats just do their thing, the manure is put in the field, and then pumpkins just spring up, and we end up with that. And sometimes it was very embarrassing to show up in school carrying that kind of stuff, because obviously you cannot even afford to go to the market and buy cabbage. But today, looking back, there's a lot more nutritious value in pumpkin leaves than there is in cabbage. But that's the irony of life. Even buying today, when you go to buy, you pay more for pumpkin leaves, for amaranth, for blackjack, for the African nightshade, and all those things that grew naturally, that were considered food for the poor, which is what we ate. So by extension, we knew we were poor. Nobody had to tell us we were poor. So most of the times we hid what we had, brought to lunch in school. There wasn't much that looked like it had much value that they were giving to us, because, we looked at value in terms of that family that has a car, that family where, they have a parent who's either a teacher or a nurse or a clerk somewhere, somebody that had a title. We didn't grow up around titles. And up to this day, I thank God, because I never value titles, because titles without service equals nothing. People just can peg so much of their identity on titles. But titles only have a meaning, as far as I'm concerned, only have a meaning when they are pegged to service. I like what Martin Luther King said, and I love to use that quote. Everybody wants to be famous, and titles make people famous. But he said, we all cannot be famous, but everyone can be significant because significance comes from service. As a young kid, of course, I didn't know all that, but I've come to learn things as I've grown older and wiser, and learned that there is a lot more value in your service than there is in your title. Going back to my childhood, I saw my grandma serve a lot. Actually, most of my life, I knew her and I saw her every day, but not for the entire day. Most of the time she was gone. She stayed gone. And then my brother and I were left grazing cows and goats and chicken, and I hated it, because again, we looked like we were, at least to the kids in the neighboring community, often ridiculed us like we were slaves, because we are always working. If we're not grazing cows, we are fetching water. If we're not fetching water, we're fetching firewood. If we're not doing that, we're tending to the coffee. If not that, we're tending to the maize. We were always working. One thing I remember Grandma telling us is that work and suffering will not kill you, cannot kill you. It didn't make sense. I'm thinking, what is she saying? Of course, she will say that she means it and she wants to instill a strong work ethic in me. But in me, I'm thinking she's saying that just to comfort us so we don't feel like the kids think we're enslaved at home. And I remember she told us, a family that works, or a place where there's work, you cannot lack the basics, because you need food. You have to work for it in the field. You need, if it's meat or whatever, you have to raise the chicken or the goats or whatever. You need money to go to school to buy whatever. You have to tend to the coffee. So that work is what produces what you need, money that you need, and to meet the needs of basic needs. And that's how she raised us. Basically, the little money that she got from coffee, because they don't really get paid much. In fact, even now, over 50 years later, they still don't get paid much for that coffee. But we worked so hard for it, and as little as it was, as part of what she used to put us through school. My mom was a young mother. And of course, as we were growing up, she was busy hustling, finding a life for herself. So we saw her once a month. And to me, I grew up knowing my mom as a friend. She was just like a friend, because I didn't see her much, so I didn't know her as a parent. I knew my grandma as everything I ever knew. She was my parent, whatever parent meant. I didn't, and she also didn't want us to address her as a grandmother, a grandparent. She just wanted to be parent, and demanded and commanded the respect of a parent. When my mom became a mother, she was a teenager. So that means, of course, her life was cut short a little too soon. She became pregnant as a teenager, dropped out of 8th grade to become a mother. And many young girls today run the risk of cutting their education short, which means, of course, compromising on the quality of life that they could potentially enjoy if they stay in their path of learning, their path of childhood, and not losing their childhood too soon, and being able to create a career, a life of significance. But I thank God that my mom, despite the fact that she became a mother at a very young age, she was one of the greatest servant leaders that I knew growing up, when I learned to recognize what she was doing. I grew up in the village under the care of my grandma. My mom at that time was raising kids in a children's home, one of the pioneer children's homes that we have in Kenya. She worked for Dr. Bernardo's children's home, and that was a big children's home at the time. So we would go visit her at the children's home and feel like, oh, I've gone to see my mom in Nairobi and whatever. Really, again, I still didn't see her as my mom. She was a friend. She was really fun. She loved music. And so whenever I went to visit her, for me, I enjoyed being in a little room. And she had this, I don't know if you all would recognize the LP, the record player. It was an old, for those young people that are watching this, especially Gen Zs, I'm sure they've never seen it. It looked like a CD. And some of them don't even know a CD. They just know a TFT card and all that. But we had some little round records that were put to play, and there was a needle. She would place and put it here, and it would just, that's what she had. And that was, I think, her biggest investment, which she was very proud of. And I loved seeing her play that and dance with us. I loved that about my mom. And there's a lot of her in me because I love music, loud music for that. In fact, I inherited her record player. I still have it. I must put it in my little museum when I finally create one. But that's just a little bit of my dynamics of childhood. Growing up, I remember in the village, my grandma would host missionaries. Not that she hosted them, she did not invite them. She worked at the local church. She was a leader in the local church. And I grew up in African Inland Church, which was originally African Inland Mission. So they invited a lot of missionaries. It was a missionary planted church. And so she was one of those. They were very strict on how you carried yourself. Growing up, you could never paint your nails, you couldn't paint your lips, you couldn't do you couldn't do hairpiece, you couldn't anything. It was like a blunt meal. My childhood was very blunt, very boring for that because, again, my neighborhood, families were not so strict. A few were, but generally speaking, we were considered among the strictest household, and kids laughed at us because we were like caged animals. I didn't have much freedom growing up. I couldn't go visit friends and play with kids and come back. I wasn't allowed to bring kids to play because now that I look back, Grandma was very conscious of the kind of influence that I would have growing up. She was very conscious of the kind of character that I would develop or I would adopt from, mixing with all kinds of kids from all kinds of backgrounds. There's some vulgar language that was used in my community that up to this day as an adult, I could never utter those words. And looking back, I'm glad that my grandma was so strict, which felt like she was being mean, but she was actually protecting my character. There is something that I see my childhood now from the rear view mirror, and I know that my grandma, even unconsciously, was shaping me up for a calling that God would reveal in my life about service. I could never comprehend service as a kid, as a young adult, in my 30s. I still didn't quite comprehend service, but I was already in it, but I did not know what to call it. When I grew up in that village and with the exposure of the missionaries that I saw from time to time, my curiosity was ignited, and I wondered why they looked different from us. And whenever they came, they brought us new clothes. They would bring candy and little bitty bitings here and there that otherwise we wouldn't see. Those would be luxury that you would only see in a magazine if you ever came across one. And these missionaries mostly brought those things. They brought Bibles, they brought books for the schools, and mostly they came to the church to sing with us, to preach, and it was beautiful just seeing people that looked different from us. But I was very curious to know where they came from because the things they brought, some of them I would only see when they came, which, like I said, was once in a while. And so my curiosity was growing, and I remember my conversations as a little kid. I was very curious, and I would ask where they came from. I remember as early as I think 9 to 11 thereabout, I would ask them, and again, my English was one word here, one word is in the coastal, region or whatever. It's like from here to another town to find another word. I would struggle to even put a sentence together in English. English, broken English, my mother tongue, Swahili, I don't know what to call that, but it was a mixture of those that I used to communicate with these people who only spoke English. And I remember asking them where they came from. They say they came from overseas. It's like, oh, this is Kenya. They come from overseas. I must go overseas at one point in my life. So I grew up knowing there's a place called overseas. There's a country called overseas. And whatever that is, at one point, I'd love to go there. How I go there, I don't know. I didn't even know how they came to Kenya. What I remember is I remember seeing aircrafts when I was a kid. I had no sense of distance. So I used to, again, out of my curious young mind, wonder how anybody, forget people, how anybody could fit into that thing that looked barely 2 feet long. And people get into that thing, how do they fit there? I would see it, I would wave at it. In my mind, I'm thinking they can see me, whoever is in there can see me. And one thing I believed is that that thing used to fly into Nairobi. In Nairobi, I had relatives that lived in the city. So I believe those were the most VIPs that I knew. Those were the most important people, the most advanced people that I knew in my family, in my relation. So I'd always send greetings with those aircrafts. What I didn't realize is even these missionaries that come to us fly. I didn't know how they travel to come to us from their overseas country to our Kenyan country. So I grew up with the curiosity of where they come from, how I could get there one time. I didn't again realize they were coming to serve. That missionary work was service work. And my dream of wanting to go overseas was fueled by just curiosity, not because we had any background of, we didn't have people that had traveled in my family. So I couldn't say I'm looking at so-and-so, where they've gone, I would want to go. It was these foreigners would come and then, stir up my curiosity, and I said, one day I want to go there. But then, of course, now as I was growing and finishing high school, I knew, it takes a lot of money to go abroad. But then I finished high school and I quickly moved into the city of Nairobi. And when I came to the city of Nairobi, I joined my mom in a little bitty room. Although before I moved to my mom's room, I did transition through a relative's home. What I thought would look like life for me in the city was totally the opposite. I toiled for long hours without pay. After about a year and a half, and dealing with so much stress, emotional, mental, physical stress without an outlet, I had to undergo expensive treatment for bad cholesterol, depression, and all that. And when I came out of that, I decided I am going to exit this little, I would say, mini prison. And I ran into my mom's little room. It was a very small room. It was barely 8 by 9 square foot. I ran there and I decided I would be more at peace there because that's my mom. Of course, at that time, I know she's my mother. And I feel and I recognize her as my mother, but I still don't understand who she is. Like, I don't understand our relationship because she didn't raise me. And she also doesn't understand me because here I am, a young adult, late teens, early 20. She doesn't recognize who I am because I formed in her absence. And so there was a lot of conflict there. So again, stress. But then again, I don't want to go back to the village because I loved my grandma, but then we were so caged, and I don't want to go back to that restricted environment as an adult because now I'm out of school. So I'm an adult and I'm ready to face life. I remember telling my mom, in that little 8 by 9 square foot room, mom, one day I'm going to travel out of this country. One day I'm going to go abroad. I'll go overseas. She used to look at me, and I remember her looking at me, like shaking her head. How will you go there? It takes a lot of money and all that. I said, yeah, but one day I will go there. I went, now again, the friends that I was making in the city, I was very conscious that I don't want to make friends that are coming from poor backgrounds. I want to make friends with children who come from affluent families, who have the kind of life that I aspire to live for myself. And that was not what my mother wanted. So my mom did not endorse or approve of a lot of my friendships. So many times I lied about where I was going. I would lie because I'm going to a party, but I would lie about so-and-so's daughter. I'm going to go see so-and-so and so-and-so. The ones that I knew she would trust. But we didn't have a phone, so she couldn't call to confirm. So I would lie and then go clubbing with kids who had money extra to pay for me to go to a club. That's how I got introduced to the clubs, by friends who would pay for me. And I would go and we would dance and do all kinds of stuff that young people do. I was experimenting life. And to me, I felt like just to be affiliated with these kids, even for a night, I felt like I'm remotely living a life that I dreamt about, a life away from the village, a life away from poverty, a life away from, what would I say, backwardness, because being in the village, you're considered backward, primitive, you know? So I want to feel classy. And I think I was just likable, because why else would these rich kids want to take me along when all I do is just go along? But they pay for everything. Some of them even came from families where they're given a family car to drive to a club. My mom would die twice if she found me in a club. Forget that, my grandma. I don't think she would wake up from her shock if she found out I was in a club, you know, given the background that she had given me growing up. So, you know, in my dreams, I would talk to these kids about my dreams, because they're also talking about going abroad, but their families had the foundation, the financial muscle. I say, how will you go? In fact, I remember one of them saying, at the time she was just joining university, and I remember her saying that she cannot die before she travels and studies abroad. I said, how will you do that? She said, what's my mom and dad doing? What's their work? And I was thinking, I can't say that about my mom, much less my dad, who I never got to know up to this day. So I thought, I zip it. I mean, I'm talking about going, but they have a valid point. They have a support system. I don't. But I still want to hang around these kids, and I still want to dream like they're dreaming. And so I remember her saying she would do her bachelor's in Kenya, and then she would do her master's out of this country. I was like, wow. But I still want to hang out with them. In a way, it's like success can be kind of rubbed off of, you know, in my young mind, I felt like hanging out with these kids that are, you know, coming from affluent families. I feel like, in a way, I'm remotely living a successful and affluent lifestyle. I remember this one friend, when she would go shopping we have a secondhand clothes market. For those of you in Kenya might recognize Gikomba. And she would go to shop there, and I also want to go shop, but I don't have the money to go shop. But I would take her. So when we were going, I remember when her mom would give her 300 or 500 shillings, she would give me 100 or 150 to also go shop. So I have a sense of, you know, hey, I have some money, I'll go pay for something. So I would buy my ripped jeans, and my mom would wonder where I got them from. I'd say my friend's mom gave. Long story, my mother did not want me to associate with such kids who come from rich families, because I'm getting introduced to a lifestyle that she cannot afford, that the family cannot afford. And now looking back, I think she had a valid point. Maybe it's how she communicated it to me. It's like, in a way, it's like she felt I should just hang out with fellow paupers. And I did not want that, because that's not the life that I was taught in the Bible. That I could have. The Bible says that I could become, or I could have anything if I asked for it by faith. And so for me, I was activating my faith by going along with kids who are from those affluent families. And so anyway, long story, I started hiding my friends from my mom, because I didn't want her to, you know, judge them, or, you know, judge the parents or whatever it was. But I never lost, at the back of my mind, I never lost the dream of going abroad or overseas. But how I would go there, I still did not know. My mom was a custodian with the Nairobi City Council, which is now the County Council. And I used to go visit her in a little room where it was 4 ladies. It's a room that could only have one stool. So the other 3 would be standing while one of them sat. And they were the happiest bunch. They were the happiest bunch. In fact, I remember 2 of the friends were called Njeri. One was Njeri, the other one was Njeri. I can remember the 4th one. But they were so happy together, doing their little bitty job, getting paid very little salary, and living in their little bitty single rooms. But they were as happy as could be. But there was nothing I admired in their lifestyle, because I knew I wanted a life better than that. And I was hoping that maybe one day I can have that life, and maybe my mom could have a bit taste of that. But my dreams were a bit threatening to the family. They thought I could probably get into prostitution, because I don't know. When we come to that point, I don't understand why they taught me about faith. But when I'm trying to speak big life in my life by faith, it became scary for them. I still will never understand that. But I thank God I never give up on my personal dreams. But I go back to my mom's little room, and I would still tell her, Mom, you know me, I will not live in a room like this. I cannot. Even if I live in a room, it will be big. It has to be bigger than this. And for sure, when I started working, my first job I worked for about 8 months, earned zero. I sold bread, hawked bread. I was hawking in the streets. I was hawking in offices, getting conned. I would go to an office. I would sell like 5 sandwiches, and I'm told to come for the money the next day. I go the next day. I find out the people that took the bread were clients of that office. So, of course, that's money that's lost. So, anytime I thought I've sold anything, if I didn't bring the money back to my employer, of course, there's no commission. It was purely on commission. So you have to bring the money to be paid 10% of what you've earned. So for 8 months, I never made enough to pay me to afford my bus fare, which was only 20 shillings one way and 20 shillings back. That would be a third of a dollar, just a little over a quarter dollar. I couldn't afford it. But I was happy to wake up in the morning, dress up, and go to work. Wake up, dress up, and go to work. Wake up, dress up, and go to work. Until it got old. 8 months of begging for bus fare, and I'm going to work. It made no sense. My mom said, "What are you working for?" And yeah, that made sense. So I quit. And but I had made friends during that time, so I started going to those offices of those friends, and those friends would, connect me with the next job. Which after that, my next job was nyama choma, barbecue, and it's a place that is very smoky. And again, you're on your feet all day. Again, that's not the life I want. But again, through there, I made more friends. So I could say one thing that has helped me through my life is my ability to network. My ability to network with people. And some of the friendships that I made back then in the mid-90s, now that will be almost 30 years, I'm still in touch with most of them. I go looking for them when I've transitioned from one area to another. I figure out a way to go looking for them. I thank God for those relationships, because those are some of the people that help open up my mind to understand, to travel abroad, to go to this overseas. By the way, there are countries. There's not a place called overseas. It's countries. To go here, you need to learn. If you want to go to Germany, you need to learn at least a language. You need to learn this. Now, I had taken some classes in French. I did take my first and second degree in French. But when I was scheduled to go to France for 6 months, it was a fully paid study exchange program. But then that's around the time I got my first paid job of 1,800 shillings. And so I abandoned an opportunity. In my young, naive mind, it's sad because we didn't have mentors back then. So there was no one to guide me. I was just dreaming and fumbling across my own path. And I lost an opportunity to go to actually, which would have been my first experience in overseas. I didn't know that. So I gave up that. I took up a job for 1,800 shillings. 1,800 shillings, I don't care how much you save, can never pay for your air ticket to go anywhere. But I had that job anyway. And out of that, I learned what I learned, and I moved on from there to IT. I had no background in IT. But just my personality really is what earned me, like I said, my networks are what earned me most of my careers that I had at the foundational level. I moved into the IT industry, working as a receptionist. I'd never seen a switchboard, but here's a switchboard. I'm saying I'm ready to learn and work. And so within a week, I was taught, I learned. During that time, again, my curiosity from childhood, I'm curious about how computers work. I'm seeing technicians working on computers. I'm seeing them in the workshop. I'm following them. Every time I have a minute from the switchboard, I'm right back in the workshop and seeing, what are these parts? And long story short, I learned the insides of a computer as a receptionist. And I became so keen and curious that I started following these technicians after hours. After work, they would go do the side hustles, and I would follow them. And I followed them for 6 months in the streets of Nairobi, specifically Luthuli and River Road. Very, very scary places to be. But at that time, I had nothing to lose, so they were not scary to me. So I followed these boys. They'd go there. They would repair small parts. I got to learn how that part works, how much it costs, how much you should charge the client. how much you could potentially make if you fix 5 computers, how much you could potentially make if you did this for a month. I wondered why these technicians were still stuck, earning 4,000, 4,500 a month, and you could actually make this 4,500 in 2 days. It's a no-brainer. So I thought, why, again, curious, why would you be stuck in this? I realized there's something called an addiction to paycheck. And even years later, I came to find out it's not just for 4,500 shillings. It could be for 45,000 shillings. It could be for 450,000 shillings. It could be for $45,000. It could be for $500,000. It could be anything. The moment you're addicted to a paycheck, you cannot see past that paycheck. Later on, I came to find out there is a lot that lays on the other side of a paycheck. You're limited. When you're addicted to a paycheck, your employer dictates and determines how much you can take home every month. When you can deliver yourself from that addiction to paycheck, there is no limit to how much you can take home a month, a day, a year. And so while I was in that company, after learning that you could actually make your monthly wages in 2 or 3 days, I quickly quit employment. And in about 3 months, I made enough to buy my first car. Moving backwards a little bit, when I was working in this company where we were selling bread, sandwiches and all, I remember my first boss there was driving a red car. She was a lady, a single lady. And she was a mother of two kids. And I remember my mom was a single mother. This is a single mother of 2 kids, driving a red car. And I remember saying, my first car will be red. My first car will be red. One day I'll own a car. I don't know how, when I cannot even make bus fare for 40 shillings a day, but I'll own a red car one day. And one day I'll travel overseas. But anyway, that was my inspiration. A lady, a single lady driving a red car. One day my car will be, I'll buy my first car, it will be red. I don't know how many others I would buy after that, but I knew I would own a car. Hers was a Toyota Celica. And fast forward, when I quit employment and I started doing my street business, I became a street vendor. I didn't have an office. I could come to your office and I say, I was really good. I still think God has gifted me with the gift of networking and just people skills. And I could go to a friend and just say, hey, can I use your office for my clients to call and place orders? Because I could not afford an office. I couldn't afford a phone. But I have a zeal to do business and make more money than be stuck somewhere and be paid so little in a month. I have a bigger picture than this. I have a big dream to go overseas. So I have to expedite my process. So I would talk to a friend and they would allow me to use their secretary. And so when my clients would call that, she would just take messages. I come back after hustling all day in the streets. I come back and take messages. I either use that phone or I go to the phone booth. Again, going back to our old days, there was phone booths. There used to be call boxes. You'd go there and put like a shilling or 3 shillings, and then you dial. And so I remember using that to call back my clients. I would take an order from a phone booth. When I go to deliver, they don't know that this call came from a phone booth. They don't know that this message was received in a borrowed office space. But they gave me business. They trusted me. They believed in me before I had an office. And so long story, I made a successful business using people's resources and using my people skills, all driven and all inspired by my desire to go overseas. I made so much success in Kenya. By the time I left here, I was driving my second car. So yes, I did buy my first car. After going into my street business, 3 months, I sold enough computers, parts, services, and everything. I bought a car for 110,000 shillings. And I think that was pretty much money back then. My family did not even understand how did you... I bought a car. I had a license before I bought a car. I got a license because I said, I'm activating my faith. I have to get a license by faith, believing I'll one time own my red car. And then when I have that red car, then, the rest would be history. I bought a car. I had had a license for about 1.5 years, but I had never practiced since driving school. So the first time I drove that car, I wrecked it. I was nearly totaled. It had to be towed. It flipped with 5 people on board. It flipped, broke the steering rack, and the entire side of the car that crashed, it had to be redone over. It was towed. I worked some more in the streets, and I paid for it to be fixed. At that point, I was like, okay, I need to start my own office. So I did secure a place in an area called Ngong Road in Nairobi. And I secured a place there. I rented a house, 2-bedroom house. So one of the rooms was my office and workshop, and the other one was my bedroom, of course. So clients never came to that house. I went to the clients. This is my house. I don't know. They don't have to know I'm operating from the house. So really, this working from home, I started a long time ago. I didn't know to call it that by that time. And so I managed to sell computers and services enough. And at one point, I won the trust of one of my clients. He loved what I did so much. And at that time, and I still think it is the same today, IT was predominantly a male industry. There were not many females doing. Actually, at that time, I only knew 2 other ladies that were in IT. That was in the late 90s. I knew 2 other ladies that were doing IT. We were fairly young. All of us were in our 20s. And we were like competitors with each other, but we were friends at the same time. So we never felt like we were enemies. But the men that were in the industry felt we were a threat because we were getting a lot of their business. I remember one of the guys that was my client. He was in the land survey industry. So he totally opposite from IT, but he loved my services. He was just intrigued about how this young girl can be fixing his computers, coming and upgrading his systems, and he is a man in business and he doesn't understand these things. I taught him some of the basics of operations, applications, and one time he sat me down. In fact, I remember I had come to install for him a sound system. It was called Creative Labs. That was the brand that we used back then. And so I came to install a sound card and speakers in his office so he can have music in the office. To him, it was like, wow, my computer, I can listen to music in the office. So he was so intrigued. He sat me down, asked me, what would it take to do business with you, in this industry? Like bring parts and computers. And I told him, we don't have to bring computers. We bring the parts, we build the computers ourselves. He said, you can build a computer? He was, again, wow, you can build it. Where did you go to school? I told him I learned from experience from where I was working. I didn't want to mention the streets. Then, they might just remove the credibility. So he agreed to work with me. And so he said, look, send me a list of some of the things that you think are the most selling, the fast moving and the price and whatever. Like, for example, this kit that you just sold to me. How much would this cost? You see, now by telling him that, it's like I'm giving away my profit margin. But I have to strip myself naked, not literally, but I had to lay my details bare for him to invest in me. And so because he had the money and I didn't have money, he invested in that. He brought a consignment. He gave me the way bill, the landing way bill. He said, here is the cost. You take it, inventory it, price it with the proper price margin, and run it. And then my return on investment was for my time, my knowledge, my time, and the service. I was the one to sell, bring back, we split the profit in half. It's good to be honest, actually. Honesty pays, because if I was greedy, like, I see a lot of young people, and actually even older people in this country, wanting to cut corners when it comes to integrity, honesty, and all that. You give them a platform, and they can see beyond just stealing. If I had no vision for my growth, or if I was like that, I just want to get rich quick overnight, I could have hijacked the entire consignment. It's been left in my custody. We never even signed a contract. It was verbal agreement based on trust. And so I was able to sell, get 50% out of zero investment. And that time I had the other car, but I was so scared of driving it after restoring it. I'd given it to my brother. And then now in selling this, the guy got into politics. So again, all the money he was making in the other business, the money he's making from this IT business, all channeled through for politics. And because he was running broke and he was also importing and selling cars, he had me buy one of his cars. He tried to sell it to me. I said, I don't have money. I hadn't saved enough to buy a car. He said, look, we're doing business. So how about this? Your 50%, you take 50% of your 50% income, you pay me back for the car. So in a way, he helped me buy the car with money that I made from his initial cash investment. So I owned a car for free, if I may put it that way, just using service. Like I said at the beginning, service can make anybody significant, can get anybody anywhere when you're serving earnestly and diligently with integrity. So the fact that I achieved my first dream of owning a red car, which my family still wondered, how did you afford a car? And I remember because I couldn't quite drive, we went to buy it, we went to pick it with my brother, so he drove it from there. And I think I only drove it that one time when I wrecked it. And after that, I was too scared to drive it. So this time when I bought the second car, it was a sports car, direct from Japan. So, you know, it was a toy that I had to learn to drive so that I can enjoy it. So after 3 months of playing with it in the estate, I was finally able to drive out. And fast forward, the rest is history. I started enjoying the confidence of walking into a client's office, holding my car keys. No handbag. I didn't own a purse. I didn't own any. I had a little bitty wallet and my ATM card and my car keys. That's it. And a notebook that I could write orders. Then I progressed from there. I got an organizer. Then from there, I got a purse. So I could present myself as, I had one skirt, one navy blue skirt, and one navy blue jacket, which was oversized. But to me, that was the most official outfit that I had. I was too busy building computers. I didn't have time for fashion. Mostly I would wear just jeans and a t-shirt. And I remember there was one pair of red jeans that if I could find it today, I gifted it to my son actually, but it was the one pair of pants that made me the most money. It was like an apron, because anywhere I went to work, it was easy to slide in and slide out of. So it stayed in the trunk of my car. Would go work in a client's site, wherever I removed them, I changed inside my car because it had tinted windows. So I just closed the windows, go to the back seat, change into my jeans, go work. After that, come change into whatever else and go meet whoever I'm meeting friends. So I started seeing my account growing. And I started feeling like this dream to go abroad or overseas was imminent, and this is actually going to become reality. In my own terms, I can pay for it. At that time, I had already now established that an aircraft is not the size of like 2 feet long. It was a matter of distance, physics and all that stuff. So I remember in 1998, again, while I was doing my business, I took a contract on with one of my clients. So I was earning from my business and I was earning from this contract. So I was having like a double income. I was making so much money that I also didn't know how to use money. I had so much money. So whatever I made, I saved some. Yes, I did. I didn't invest in anything, but I shared with my friends a lot. So I became very popular among my friends. Of course, at that time, I didn't know about the syndrome of, user syndrome, So every month I would just do a party for my friends. I mean, there was so much money. I never grew up with money. So here is some money. Let's spend it, right? And so I spend money with my family and my friends, but I'm still saving. But in 1998, towards the end, I got an opportunity to travel to the UK. And when I went to the UK, that was the first time I was exposed to overseas. First world. I mean, electric trains, things that just move from one town to another in 2 minutes. You are there. How? And when I think about it, in Nairobi in Kenya to move from one town to another, it's about like 2 hours, 3 hours. But here we're taking, in 2-3 minutes, boom, Acton Station, Piccadilly Station, we're in wherever. London is beautiful. It was beautiful. I never thought I would want to come back to Kenya. But after my assignment was over, I had to come back to Kenya. I had left my car, I had left my house on Ngong Road, and I had to come and dispose of the things. But after tasting that, it was clearer to me of what to expect, in the first world. I'm now there mingling with all these people that didn't look like me, without sounding racists, they are white. And I actually like them, except in London, one thing I did not like, people, either it's them or it's a culture. They were just so brisk, so fast. You get lost and you're trying to ask somebody for the way. You know, in Africa, you stop, you ask somebody for the way, they start asking you, where are you from? What's the name of your clan? They start a story. Oh, I also have an in-law, you know, my grandpa can, you know, in Africa, we could tell stories. And so I'm expecting the same in the first world. There's a reason they are the first world, and it's a fast-paced lifestyle. So I would stop to ask somebody for the way, and I'm lost. I remember one time I was lost in an area called Piccadilly Circus in London. I've exited from the tube. I can't tell where I'm going. I don't know to read street names. We don't have street names. So I'm asking this guy, and he's answering me while he's walking. I'm thinking he's so mean. I thought he's so mean. For a minute, I thought, is he hating me because of my skin color? I didn't even, first of all, the accent again is so deep. I didn't understand what he was saying. But I remember him telling me, I don't know what, okay, so I didn't follow what he said. So I waited for the next person. I asked 3 people before I could find that I was lost. I had already passed where I should have exited. So I had to pay, get into another tube, and then go exit. So besides that little thing, I still fell in love with the Western world. And I came back to Kenya knowing I must come, wrap it up, and head out. Now, at that time, I thought I was just going to go back to the UK and just, hey, go back and settle in London. During those few months that I was there, I had established that, yes, it's the UK. Yes, it's a Western country. It's a first world country. But they did not know technology the way I thought they should know technology. I actually made a few, pounds here and there fixing people's computers, training people, basic computer skills. And I thought, I need to go wrap it up and come back here. But then, I came back here, and with the advice of more elite people that were more troubled than I was, they felt, and again, they had known my personality, they could see the potential in me, and then they advised me against going back to the UK. They advised me about going to the US, but I thought, the US, the horror stories I had heard about the visas, you cannot get a visa to the US unless your family has this kind of a bank account, unless you have people there, and so I had to go back to the drawing board, and I spoke. I speak to myself a lot. I speak to myself to encourage myself. I speak to myself to challenge myself. I speak to myself to inspire myself. I speak to myself to believe. I speak until I believe. And so I went back to my little corner and started dreaming. Now, back to the drawing board, I have to start to think about going to a country where I don't know anybody who's ever gone to. But I still went back, and I thought, you know what, I'll give it a shot. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to London. At least I've been there, it's familiar. So then again, during that time, I started researching, and I found AIM, African Inland Mission, which is the church that I grew up in. Apparently, most of the missionaries had come from America. But I had no clue. Again, those were missionaries. I don't know anybody who can tell me this is how life is in America. At least in the UK, I know. And I even know how, I've learned a little bit about their transport system. I've learned a little bit about their labor. I've learned a little bit about their culture, their foods and stuff. But I said, anyway, let me try this. And so with the help of these advices, I tried applying because I had to figure out, okay, I'm going to go to the US. In what capacity? I don't know anybody who's been there. I hear people go to study, go to work, win green cards. And so how do people even win green card? What's a green card? I don't even know what it is. So even when I left Kenya, I didn't even know what a green card is. Now, I was at the prime of my career here, owning businesses and working for somebody else on contract. So people that knew my success level didn't think it was right for me to travel. But you see, I wasn't going there to look for opportunities. I was going there because I was curious. I want to learn something different from another culture. I want to experience life out of this country, and especially in the first world. And so I remember there's a place I used to take my car for service, for cleaning, and the guy that owned the place had spent a year in Japan, so he had tasted life in the first world. He discouraged me from going to the US. He said, what are you going? Zembi, you're doing so well. Look at the car you're driving. Look at the life you're living. What are you going to do in the US? I say, I want to go and take a degree in IT and just experience the culture there. I'll go and maybe after 10, 15 years, maybe I'll come back. say if you go there, you're going to get stuck. Don't go there. So one day when we were there, one of his clients came to bring the car for service. He had just moved from Maryland, from the US. And so we were having this discussion. So the garage owner tells this, can you imagine this chick is trying to go to the US? Tell her, man, you've lived there for so many years, you're back here. He's like, man, there's no life like back in Kenya. There's no life like in Kenya. What are you trying to do? If you have a car, you have a nice place to stay, you have a way to afford your everyday life. And if you have a car like what you have and you're living in the neighborhood you're living in, really you have it all. There's nothing in America that you don't have here. Well, in my mind, I didn't know who he was, so I didn't want to step on his toes. But in my mind, I'm thinking, that's your experience. That's according to you. I would never allow anybody to abort my dreams. And I want to encourage anybody that's watching this. Never allow anybody to abort your dreams. However crazy they are, however wild they may be, they're yours. You better own them. Be realistic, though. See, when I was dreaming about overseas as a kid, I wasn't realistic. I didn't know anything. But as you grow older, you experience life. You meet different people. You listen to their stories. Stories are very, very powerful. Stories are very educational. Stories are very informing. They're very liberating if you listen to them with an intention to learn. So I listened to all these stories, including this one who is telling me that there is nothing to learn or there is nothing to experience in America if you're living this life. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's according to you, but not according to me, because I still felt, okay, I've lived it all in Kenya, so I still want to go. So, but later on, I came to find out he had been deported. He'd been in America, I think it was 21 years. And he had never visited Kenya in those 21 years. So, of course, for him, he wouldn't encourage anybody to go where he went and however his life was there, because I never met him another time after that. But the gentleman that owned this garage was our mutual friend. So this guy would tell me about this. So I still didn't understand what deportation was. So I didn't care. So I pursued my dreams. I said the only thing that would stop me is if I don't get that visa. If I don't, I'll go back to the UK. If I still don't get that one, I'll continue with my life. I mean, I already had planned my next car. I mean, my growth was, I had never thought about buying property. I had driven a red car, which was, by the way, it was an Alfa Romeo. And my second car that I was driving before I left the country was a Toyota, Toyota Starlet Turbo. That's what I was driving. And so I was like, if I don't manage to get a visa to go anywhere, the next car that I'm going to buy, because I was looking at women that were in their 30s and 40s and driving. I'm like, ooh, that's a woman like me. I mean, she's out there in age, she has a career and this and this, but she's a woman. And the car that was trending that I was now eyeing next was a Suzuki Vitara. A Vitara was it. I was going to buy a Vitara or a two-door Pajero. Just moving on in cars. Not thinking of buying a house or property or anything. It's just let me live my life. So I applied for my visa, and that was after so many naysayers, which again, you must block the naysayers in your life if you want to go anywhere in life. It might look unrealistic in the eyes of men. But when you know that you and your God or whatever you believe in, when you know and you're convinced beyond any shadow of doubt that it is possible for you, then it will be possible for you. And to me, I feel like that's a way of honoring God. God gives us promises. And when he gives us promises, it's up to us to work towards achieving or receiving or claiming those promises. He cannot force them down our throat. And for me, it's because I always had a dream. At the back of my mind, I worked with a dream in mind, a dream in mind. Even if the dream was to own a Suzuki Vitara, to me that would still be a dream, because it will still be a level above where I was. And when I listen to people who never thought I should try going to the US, I thought, you know what, zip it. I don't have to share it with everybody. Because sometimes it's like having a balloon and you've put so much air in it, and maybe you've struggled to fill it with air. And then you let people play with that balloon who don't know how much it has taken for you to get it, for you to fill it with air. And because they don't know, so they will not handle it with care. And then next thing you know, they puncture into your balloon. That probably is something so precious. So to me, my dream became mine and personal. And so I stopped sharing with many people, especially in part because, as I had shared, I had come back from the UK, and many people felt, even though I'm desiring to go to the US because I really want to experience life there, but especially I want to go as a student to learn IT. I want to go and gain more exposure out there. People didn't feel like I was being genuine. They felt like I just want to raise money, get money, and plow it back into my business. Because not many people my age were doing business, actually. Most of them were employed. I tried to encourage many of them, even the ones that taught me the street skills, IT street skills. I tried to encourage them to do business. They were stuck in their 4,000, 5,000 shillings a month salary. So many of them didn't support my idea of going. And so I kept quiet, I pursued it. When I went for the visa, I remember that interviewing officer, he was a Korean, notorious for denying people visas. So people who had friends or relatives who had traveled, who had tried to go to the embassy, knew that guy. There are people who had never gone to the embassy, but they knew about the Korean guy. So they told me, oh, whenever you go, just pray that you don't find the Korean guy, because he will never give you a visa. I had a relative who worked at the embassy, the US embassy, before it was bombed in Nairobi. And she told me also, I work for the embassy, yes. You can get this, but you need someone to coach you in the process, or find someone that you can pay to get you a visa. I just didn't understand, because I had gone to the UK. And I remember going to the UK, I went to for the visa interview myself. So I didn't understand how somebody can help you get a visa. I didn't understand that. Anyway, I didn't understand corruption. I don't understand corruption very well. And besides, there's something in me that when I believe that something is possible, I will try it at least 3 times and fail before I ask somebody else to do it for me. I don't ask for help that much. I try. If it's fixing an electronic, I will try at least 3 times. It doesn't work, I'll give it to somebody. So many people, before I can hire someone to fix some of my electronics and stuff, or even my car, before I go to have it fixed, I research what the problem is. So this thing of just cutting corners and just immediately paying somebody to cheat me out of my money and stuff, I don't believe in that. So this lady, even though she worked for the embassy, she did tell me it's not easy to get a visa. So you might want to pay somebody who can help you get a visa. At that time, people were spending anywhere in the tune of 100 to 150,000 Kenya shillings. People were borrowing money to pay somebody to get them a visa. And when they don't get it, where do you take them? You can't take them anywhere. You've borrowed money. So you're 150,000 shillings in debt, and then you don't get a visa because you're hoping if you get the visa, you go out there, you can pay back that money. I had the money, but I wasn't going to pay anybody. One thing I did know is there's a scripture in Corinthians that God is not mocked. Whatever you plant, you reap. I had been serving God in the youth. I had been serving God in the community. And I was like, if I have trusted or I have entrusted my dreams in Him, because I conceived this dream when I was a kid, and it was an innocent dream when I didn't even know where overseas is. Now that the dream and the vision is becoming clearer, I cannot abort it or entrust it now in the hands of men. I will entrust this in the hands of God. And that's not religious. There's nothing religious about that. There's a conviction that you must have if you believe fully in your dream. And so I went out and I said, I'm going to do my research. We didn't have a lot of resources, technology resources to research from. There was no ChatGPT, there was no AI. Google was there, and AOL, and was MSN, and they were very rare because computers with internet were in the so-and-so and who's offices. So again, I used my networks to befriend these people, go to their offices and research. And I just looked at what I need to present at the embassy. I needed to do my TOEFL, which is basically it's an English, test. And that was like 8 years after high school. And I didn't think I would start failing now. So anyway, I went and took the test. The other things they ask you, of course, you have to bring your I-20, which is the immigration document that comes from the university that you're applying to. So I did all that. I did all my homework. And then the day for the interview was here. I had booked. Now, when I booked, I didn't know when my I-20 would arrive. You have to have your I-20 before you can go for the interview. So my I-20 arrived, but it arrived actually it arrived just a few days before my interview. But my reporting date to the university would be before the date of my interview. I don't know if that makes sense. I was supposed to report on the 24th of August for the fall semester. My interview for the visa was the 24th of September, which was the following month. Then again, I share with my friends, they're like, don't bother. You know, I've paid for that visa. If you don't show up for the interview, you lose that money. But people are telling me, you cannot be interviewed and given a visa after your reporting date. I say, well, it's not my fault. I'm going to show up anyway. So I remember showing up there very early in the morning around 6:30. I was on my way to my interview was at 10:45, but I was there before 10 o'clock. We sat at the waiting bay. When finally we were called, we were five per window, and there were 5 windows, and I was at window number 5. Man, when I sat there, I was the fourth person. And then I looked at the guy. He looked Asian, sort of. He was that Korean guy. I thought, as fate would have it, I had to come and face the Korean. You know, that moment when you feel like your entire stomach is on fire, you feel like, you know, you're stepping on thorns, and you feel like, oh God, can I just close my eyes and you switch me to another window? But then, because that's not going to happen, I just told God, okay, this is the moment of truth between you and I. You say that beyond any shadow of doubt, if we believe and don't doubt, that is in the book of Mark, chapter 11:24, it says, whatever you ask for, whatever you pray for, if you believe and do not doubt, you already have it. So you have it even before it's manifested. And so I said, God, this is a moment of truth. I thank God for my foundation as a kid. So I always went back to withdraw from my faith account. I remember invoking these words of Mark 11:24. God, you said, if I pray and believe and do not doubt, even if I tell that mountain to move, it will move. Although I'm yet to move a mountain, but I guess a mountain is figurative. It could be anything. To me, that was a huge mountain, especially given all that everybody had preached to me that if you find the Korean, just forget it. Now here's the Korean. So to me, that Korean was my mountain. And that was my moment of truth with God and I to see, can we move this mountain? And I just thought, God, please, you can't bring me this far to let me down. So when my turn came, the first 3 people were denied. One of them was a young 17-year-old boy, and he was denied because he didn't know any better. He's just excited about going to America, but he's already dressed like he's in Harlem, New York. He's dressed with a cape sideways, saggy pants, and he's there like with the headphones over here, like he's already looking thuggish. Anyway, so when it came to my turn, of course, I spoke with the guy with a lot of confidence, and I remember I came to him, and the first thing, I had learned something about people skills. Greet them first before they greet you. Broke the ice. I said hello to him, and he just gave me a finger. He did not he didn't even acknowledge me physically, but he gave me the finger, finished noting down what he was noting, and then, yes, how can I help you? And I talked to him. I tell him, I am here for my student visa. He said, who is going to study? I said, I am going to study. What are you going to study? I'm going to study information systems. What exactly does that entail? I had done my little homework. I knew a thing or two about what that field entails, and then the fact that I was working in the IT industry. I told him, actually, I've been working in this industry, and I just want to go in and enhance my the understanding on this field, and so that's why I want to go and get some college credentials. I've been working on this, but I don't have any college credentials. Who's going to be paying for your fees? I said, I will be self-sponsored, but with partial assistance from my employer. Okay. Do you have a bank statement to show? Yeah. I showed him my bank statement. I showed him. Then I didn't even show my employer's bank statement, but I had it. And then I had an affidavit of support from them, because they had to validate that I worked for them and this is what I did, and actually they are aware I'm going. So I'm not running away from my employer. I'm not just going out there to laze around. The guy looked at my bank statement. It was quite attractive, actually. I kind of miss those figures in my bank account now. Yeah, because they were quickly swallowed by the American bill system. But anyway, I gave him that. He asked me, he saw my car keys. He said, are you driving? Whose car are you driving? I said, it's mine. Do you have the logbook, which I came to learn in America is called the title? I said, yes, sir, I do. I gave it to him. So he could see it in my name, bank statement. He could see, what I was doing. And so he said, oh, okay. How long are you going to be gone? I say, it's a 4-year program, and maybe after 4 years, I don't know what next, but I intend to go study and come back. He said, what happens if you don't come back? I said, why would I not come back? What happens if you go there and you get married? I said, I'm not going there to get married. I'm going there to study. And I said, and if I go there and get married, so be it. But I'm going there to study. That's my goal. And, he said, many people at your age, you're young, you're single, and, we don't know whether you're going there to really study or you're going there to get married. Or I said, like I said, if I go there and I get married, so be it. But I'm going there to study. That's my primary goal. I want to go there, study. I want to go there, get that exposure, and come back to Kenya. And really, it was so, that interview is so grilling. You think someone is grilling you to go to heaven. When we're told the way to go to heaven, it's easy. Accept that Jesus is the Son of God. He's your Savior. We've never seen him. We accept, and it's so simple. It's like it's easier to go to heaven than to go to America. I think because I had an interview for the UK, it was rigorous, but the one to America. But I came to move there, and I came to understand why. America is truly a land of opportunity. You can go there with your foolishness. What is considered foolishness in your home country becomes your niche in America. And you could become a millionaire like this. You probably go, and if you can find a way to smile with your mouth somewhere here, hey, that's a miracle. That's something that will make you a celebrity overnight like that. And so anyway, the truth is America is full of opportunities. America has a lot of social welfare. America has a lot of things that help people, that can help people live a beautiful life without necessarily working so hard. And I could see why they police the process so much, because then they don't want to just bring liabilities into their country. Nobody would want to do that. But anyway, long story, I got that. I came back home. I stayed 3 months, and then I went to the States. Now, when I was going to the States, I just knew it's America. I didn't know what to expect. I'd never been there, never knew anybody who's been there to tell me what to expect, except I heard that at least for the first 1 year, you must make sure you have at least 1 to 1.5 million to survive. And when I left Kenya, before I paid for my air ticket, I had 1.45. So it was close to 1.5. So after paying for my air ticket, your bucket is already beginning to leak. And you're going to a foreign country, you don't know how to survive there. I had been accepted in a university that was private, where we were paying $7,000 a semester. So that would already eat into my little savings, 50%, before I figure out what next. This is a country where I don't know anybody. I'm not going there to have a brother or a sister show me around. There's a lot of free resources in America, which I did not know. I landed there in the winter of 1999. I had never walked in snow, but you walk in snow where you step in and the snow is up to here. You're instantly frozen. I thought I had winter clothing. I didn't. I quickly had to go and shop. I had bought one heavy jacket. According to me, it was heavy, from our secondhand clothes store here in Gikomba. Anyway, so winter was the first culture shock. Second, the roads were so huge. Here where we say you're in the city or between a city and another town, and it's only a single lane, there you find 6 lanes. You're lost in the road. I mean, you're trying to drive into that. I mean, it's beautiful once you get used to it, but to me, I would be mesmerized by that. The stores were huge. You go into a store, a mall, just a regular grocery store, it's automatic doors. In Kenya, I had only remembered seeing one at the Coca-Cola offices at the Chancery. I had never seen another, I had never seen a supermarket with, sliding doors. And there I am, and I'm like, wow, it truly is a land of opportunity. You go to the malls, it's because during the winter it's Christmas time, so it's the festive season. And there's so much giveaway. You're like, what in the world? You go, you buy one cake, you get two for free, or you buy one, get one free, or you go, they give you free cookies, they give a lot of stuff to just try. And I thought, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then now I'm getting to get to know the African, networks and stuff. When I landed there, I had known one couple from our childhood days in the church. So they received me, and I was only there with them for 2 weeks. They'd been there for a while, but they had since stopped going to college. I didn't know it was a thing, that if you don't stop going to college, you automatically go out of status. Many people don't even know what that is. That means you've violated your visa terms, and that means you're already deportable. So what that means is you're playing hide and seek with the law. So such people, unfortunately, are people who cannot they cannot guide you on how to live right in a foreign country, because they're already on the wrong side of the law. You've arrived, so you're on the right side of the law. Misery loves company. So such people would rather have you join their side. And because they also don't want you to know the truth about their story, they never talk about their experiences. They never tell you anything about, working so many hours out of college, dropping out of school, even not dropping out of school, even dropping 1 credit hour, because as a student, you're expected to carry a full load of at least 12 credit hours. At any given time of your study, you must carry a full load. If you're an American child or citizen, you can do 2 hours, 1 hour. You don't have an immigration law to follow. You don't have any conditions. But as an international student, you got a visa primarily to go study. So that's your full-time assignment. So the people that I met there had already fallen out of status. And they're not telling me you could actually find cheaper schools, because they're already out of status. They've dropped out of school, even from the cheapest community college level, they've dropped. So I went there and I reported to my school, which was very expensive. Luckily, and I don't say luckily, I believe it's, again, God had ordered my steps, that while I was being hosted by this one couple, which I appreciate their 2-week hosting, at the very least, I appreciate that. But they never gave me any directions moving forward. But one of their friends who had visited at the time with a broken computer, and I fixed for him, and I didn't charge him. His name is Dr. Gitao. And he knew the university system. And when he heard that I'd gone to this private university, he was concerned. Why didn't you guys tell her there are cheaper schools that she can find? Because how is she going to sustain herself there? It's in a very remote city. But I applied to that school on purpose. First of all, because I'm going to America. In America, when I see the only side about America that I had seen was in the movies. New York, LA, Dallas, Chicago. I had said I would never step my foot in any of those cities or those states. I don't want anything to do with those places, because you see just crime, drugs, big cities, big cars, big drugs, and like Dallas, Texas, there was a lot of cowboys, and I thought that's all there is. So I don't want any. So I wanted to look for a place that is removed and a little remote and a little not too fast-paced, so that I can slowly ease into the American life. That's why I chose that university. But I didn't know you could actually choose still a cheaper university in the same areas, because I didn't have anyone guiding me. So anyway, this guy, when he heard that I had gone to that school, the second day he called me and he came pick me up from there, and he said, no. Luckily, I don't know what, but in my intuition, I kind of kept thinking there would be another opportunity, so I didn't pay for the fees. I paid $100 to register. And then two days later, he came to get me. Now, my journey there, as it was here, has been on faith. I've taken a lot of risks. Going there, I took the risks I gave up my thriving career in Kenya. And sometimes when you're following a calling that you don't even know it's a calling, the path of calling will take you through ups and downs. You take risks, you give up stuff, you sacrifice relationships and friendships and stuff. Like leaving Kenya, I sacrificed. I was going to leave my family to go to a country where I have no family or sense of family. I sacrificed the comfort that I had become so accustomed to, driving in and out of anywhere I wanted, anytime, driving into my house, which was all very well furnished and it had everything I needed. I moved away from what was familiar to go and start afresh in a place I know nobody, I know nothing about. Anything could happen, but you have to take that risk if you're going to go anywhere, if you're going to grow. So that transition to me was a shocker. This guy bringing me back from that university said, I believe we can get another school for you. In the next 2 weeks before the spring semester fully starts in January, I think we can get another school for you. Thinking, how? He says, have you tried this school? Have you tried? Because him working in the university systems, he knew different schools. So I tried. I applied to 2 universities. And he said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to download this. You're going to do this. You're going to FedEx it overnight. And I did that aggressively. And within 7 days, I had another I-20 from a university called Washburn. Washburn. I had moved from Ottawa University to Washburn. Now, meanwhile, in Ottawa, that first day, by the second day he came to pick me, I had already gone to the local market. There was one supermarket, Walmart, and then there was one bank called the People's Bank. And if you didn't drive or didn't ride a bike, out of luck, there was no way to get there. So the international student office had helped me get to those facilities and back, but then it was short-lived. Luckily, I'm glad I moved from there. My roommate, she was dirty. Those 2 days felt like 2 months or more. And then she kept a hamster. A hamster is just a big rat. And she kept that as a pet in the room. She didn't clean after it. It was dirty. And I was like, ugh. Welcome to America. And I was thinking, no. So here I am. I'm back at this couple's house. I applied, and within that week, I got a calling letter at Washburn University. So when the day I reported, there was a lady there called Marva Early, and she was excited to meet me because I'm from Kenya. We're, champions, athletic champions. So they're getting a Kenyan, so she will be their university representative, and she's like, can you run? I say, not competitively. They were waiting to give me a scholarship based on that, but I couldn't run to save my life, so I had to pay. But at least it was 50% cheaper than Ottawa University, so I paid there. During that one term, I was beginning to learn that there are other universities, other colleges. You can downgrade, so that you can get to a school that you can easily afford, even when things are thick back home or whatever your sources are, you're able to still stay in status. So my point here is, you don't always have to go out of status when you go out of the country. You don't always have to violate your immigration status because of fees. You can find a school that is cheaper and at least stay within your immigration status. That's one of the things that works against many foreigners. But then again, it depends on who you spend your time with. It depends on, bad company corrupts good morals. And if you want to hang out with thugs and you are not a thug, sooner or later you're going to adopt their traits because they are the majority. So many people I came to learn, you go there, you find the people that have lived there for years, they already violated their immigration status. And instead of them advising you on how you can remain within status by, downgrading to a local college or another college in another city that is cheaper, they just say, hey, you're here. The most important thing is you're here. We'll show you the ropes. We'll show you how we survive here. They get you to take 2-3 different jobs. That's not for everybody, but it's for the people that go and land in the wrong company, hang out with the wrong company, and forget why they went there. There's nothing wrong with working if you have the right credentials and stuff. But don't make that priority or your primary reason that you abandon what brought you there, because that's already the beginning of your criminal life. I mean, if you're there for 2 months, 3 months, and you're already out of status, you're already deportable. Maybe your family gave up so much. Maybe they borrowed so much money. Maybe they sold property to send you over there, and you go there and you get into this reckless life of doing 2, 3 jobs to quickly, ascend to the American dream lifestyle of driving a big Escalade or whatever it is, and living in, a high rise, a skyscraper up there. But you're living a lie. And you also know that you're living against the law. I mean, you're on the wrong side of the law. You cannot have peace in a foreign country. But I think one thing I learned during that time was when people move from their country, or let me say for us, let's speak about Kenya. In Kenya is a wonderful country. We're seeing a lot of influx now of foreigners, especially African Americans, moving to Kenya. But one thing I realized with Kenya, we are very witty people. We are a very witty culture. We are very sharp. But sometimes we use that to break the law. We could use that to be on the wrong side of the law. And unfortunately, you might find there's an easy way to get out of that side of the law. I mean, you break the law, and then you pay the law to get you out of that bad side of the law, if that makes sense. So I think then what I learned is people go out there with that mindset. And you go there and you think you're going to live in a foreign country as if you're still in Kenya. And you think if a cop pulls you over, you're already ready to talk. Maybe you have $100 ready. That doubles your crime. I mean, if you are being pulled over for maybe overspeeding or running a red light or a license plate that is expired or whatever, because you have to, to renew those things. And if you're not up to date with those documents, and then a cop pulls you over and you try to pull money to bribe them, bribery is a big, big crime there. I'm sure there is some that happens, but a very, very subtle level, very, very subtle. Not obviously like here where, a cop will just ask you, hey, so can we talk? What do you mean we're talking? So, you go to America and you want to talk that language. And then again, like I said, people go and because there's a life they want to live, a life of luxury. But you cannot live a peaceful life of luxury on the wrong side of the law. Because you're always going to be driving, watching over your shoulder. You hear, a siren of an ambulance going to address an emergency. You think they're coming after you, because in America, when you call 911, the emergency line, three institutions respond: the police, the fire department, and the ambulance, because they don't know what the emergency is. So until they get there and find out, it was not a fire, so the fire trucks go back. If it was a medical thing, the ambulance takes care of it. If it was a burglary, it's the police. So, when you hear a siren and you know you're on the wrong side of the law, you don't have to be told. You'll always be panicking, and that's not the way to live. And I didn't want to live that way. So I downgraded in my college, and I went to this university. But again, I was making networks of people that I know are in school, so that they can help me find cheaper options in colleges without going out of status. And while I was in that university, I was also learning different places where you can find free resources. There's a lot of free resources in America. We've come from a country here in Kenya. How many times do you go somewhere and you could just go and say, my kids don't have food, and you bring your car and you open the trunk, and then there are attendants, they're loading your car with food for your family, and you're driving? In Kenya? Maybe there are places that I don't know about. But at least when I left Kenya, I knew we didn't have food banks. You go there are food banks. You don't have to deposit into that bank to withdraw. All I knew is you cannot withdraw from a bank that you've not, invested in or deposited. But in America, there is. You go for food, you get food. You go to free community libraries. You go there, use them for free. You use the computers for free. Here, you have to pay so much, and and even the facilities are few and far in between. And so there I am, and I'm learning, we actually have these things. You can actually go to a church and just tell them you don't have food. You go to a church or a shelter and say you don't have a place to stay. And they will give you a place to stay with free hot showers, free breakfast. They give you skills to help you become more employable. And if it's school, there are institutions, there are places that can help you with that. Even the university where you are, there's a department for international students. And if you go there and genuinely you're struggling financially, they have a program called financial aid. And they will work with you, whether you're local, whether you're an American or you're a foreigner. Mostly it's for foreigners that are struggling. And they will put you in that. You might get partial sponsorship, and then the other part you take care of. I learned all that. But during that time, I was meeting other foreigners, mostly Africans. There was Tanzanians and Ugandans and Kenyans. Luckily, all of them were going to school, so there was no bad peer pressure there. And I remember, and then there was one guy from Malawi. We were all going to university together. In that network of African immigrant students, there was only one house that had a vacuum cleaner. A vacuum cleaner, because really all the houses there are carpeted. So you have to vacuum your carpet. But all these students, they're poor, poor students who don't have that. But a group of three girls that lived together in two-bedroom apartment, they had a vacuum cleaner. And that was where all of us would go borrow that vacuum cleaner. Well, for me, I stayed in the dorm, so I didn't have to vacuum. I didn't have to go borrow that because in our dorm, there was somebody with a vacuum cleaner. But then again, there I was with a roommate. I've come from living alone in Kenya to go share a room with somebody in a dining room with 8 other girls. You don't even know who they are. Some don't bathe. Like my roommate didn't bathe. She just comes, changes, drops the pants there, skips over into her pajamas, in the morning out of pajamas to another pair of pants. Like, the room was stinky. And I was like, oh, I can't take this more than a semester. So during that semester, I had made friends with these 2 girls that owned a vacuum cleaner. So every weekend, this community of African immigrant students would go borrow that vacuum cleaner, so we'd clean in turns. And so these girls embraced me. One of them was Evelyn, the other one was Bonnie, and they were both actually Ugandans. Actually, I think when I went to the US, the first people that I met that were very gracious and very kind to me were Ugandans. And we've stayed in touch. And so anyway, they said, now over the weekend, you don't have to stay in the dorm, just come and stay with us. So I started having like a homely experience in a fellow student's home. They'd come from affluent families where they're still getting support from Africa. Me, I'm there as an international student. My family is expecting support from me because remember, I had been supporting them while I was in Kenya. Now my money has been plowed on the other side, but they still know I'm in America, so I don't have a phone. I'm so homesick. Almost every night I'm crying. I was so homesick in America. I would call at least once every 4 days. Once in 4 days. Every 4 days I would call at least once in the evening, because in the evening it's morning here. But then I have to wait for, if it's my grandma, she had to go to, I had one auntie in the village who had a house phone. So I had to say, I called my auntie and say, can you send somebody to grandma to tell her to come there on Thursday at this time, wait for my call. So she would be there eagerly waiting for my phone call. And I have to call. God forbid that I'm trying to call and it's not going through. She's sitting there. She's lost that early morning sleep and it doesn't go through. So it was really hard, staying in touch with. That was the closest I came to just staying in touch with family, just to talk to somebody. My mom, where she lived, my brother had since moved there in a little room in Gara. And so there was a motorcycle repair shop in the back of that plot. So again, I would tell the guy, the gentleman who owned the shop was called John. I'll tell John, can you please tell my brother to expect my call there at this time on this date and stuff. It was crazy. The logistics of communications and staying in touch with family were crazy. I was homesick. I'm thinking, where was I going? I'm so homesick. It's so cold. It's expensive. I thought maybe I made a mistake. But then I cannot pack my stuff and come back. What I've invested so far would be a waste and a loss. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to, I have to own this and I have to find something out of this. I have to learn something, I have to earn something out of it. And so at the end of that semester, by the end of that spring semester, I had applied to another university in another state. in Dallas. Remember I had said I never want anything to do with Texas or Dallas, the drugs, the cowboys and everything. Stereotype is bad. Stereotype is bad because I know there are people who stereotype Africa. Like for example, out there, you'd be there and somebody comes and asks you, you speak such good English. Did you learn the English when you got here? And I'm like, yeah. How do you learn English in 3 months as an adult and be able to communicate proficiently? But I guess it's because most people that they met there that have come from other countries that didn't speak English were struggling. You find somebody's in their 20s, 30s, 40s, they could not communicate. So again, Americans, I'm sorry, nothing against America generally, but there's also a lot of ignorance in America. Or let me say in any native population. In Africa, in Kenya, native Kenyans, natives, they're very ignorant about life in the city, in their own country. They're very ignorant about life in another culture, in another tribe that's not theirs. So exposure, networking is very, very powerful. So they're even more ignorant about life abroad. Just like me. Remember, I used to think overseas, but then again, I was a kid. I think that's understandable. But you find adults in Africa who think Americans or white people don't know poverty. That's the stereotype. That's a lie. There is poverty in America, even among the Americans. Now, whether it's out of bad, life choices or family or whatever it is, but there is poverty. The difference is there is a system, a social welfare system, that sort of supplements the needs for these very needy people to not suffer as much as we do in Africa. But then again, like I said, stereotypes they can be detrimental to our growth or even to our global image or perspective. You just think these people are like this because maybe you heard a lie told by another liar who heard from another liar, and it becomes the truth that you be. But it's actually a lie. So, for example, I went there thinking, Americans are very racist, and there's no way I can fit in, but they embraced me. Then again, now their ignorance about us, they think we don't speak English. They think we don't wear clothes because all they see is what they see on documentaries, which, by the way, it's so sad that most popular documentaries out there are the ones that only portray the poverty, the degree of poverty in Africa. And then when they see one picture or video of a child in Kibera with flies coming out of their nostrils and big stomach and whatever, they take that to be a representation of Kenya, of Africa. They didn't believe that we have high-rise buildings, we actually have cities. Like, how? Don't you guys live with animals in the house? I said, yeah, we do. I mean, I grew up where our kitchen, we actually shared a kitchen with the sheep. And so when they sneeze, when they blow their nose, you know what? Yeah, that's very graphic. So that's the only image that some Americans have, because again, just like us here, no exposure. Many of them have never traveled beyond their county region. So they're very unexposed. And then they have access to all the knowledge, like I said earlier. There's libraries everywhere, but they don't read. They don't go to research. So they can only relate with you from their angle of ignorance based on the 1 or 2 documentaries that they've watched. So we were there, and they would think, oh, you're from Africa, you guys, you don't wear clothes, you live with animals, in the same cage, how did you learn English in 3 months and stuff? And I'm like, we must be very smart to learn English in 3 months. But at the same time, I was learning about their good sides of, like I said earlier, their social welfare and things that are available to us and all. And I wanted to get myself integrated into the system so that I am not just going to look for people who look like me, think like me, sound like me. Going back to what I had said earlier, how if I have failed or if I know I have screwed up with the law, I might not want to tell you because that's something I'm trying to guard. It's like it's a sore spot. Immigration is a sore spot. It's an area that many people don't want to touch. So if you come in to ask me and I already know I've messed up on my part, I don't want to advise you. How can I advise you? I can only advise you based on what I have done, which is not good. But some people, unfortunately, go fall in that. They're like, come on, we'll show you how we cut the corners. And so I looked at a few people who had done that, and I quickly knew I don't want to be in those circles. These few Africans who were sharing, a weekend apartment, we are sharing a vacuum cleaner and all that. Luckily, they were in good standing. And so we were together for about a semester and a summer break. During that time, I had taken up a job. I'd gone and applied for a work permit. During the summer, you're allowed to work, outside, but during the semester, you're not allowed to work outside campus. But during that summer, I had taken up a job at Topeka Country Club. It's a golf country club in the state of Kansas. And man, that's the first time I waited tables. I had never waited anyone's table, but there are people who are so skilled at it. They grab a tray full of like 10 or 12 glasses, then flip it up, and they walk like they're modeling. So I decided to do that one day. And they all came toppling down. Luckily, it was just water, ice water. And they are the stem glasses. So boom, 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 it was all on the carpet, on the floor and everything. I had a good boss. His name was Sam, and he said, Rosie, we all break glasses before we can learn. But just do this. Carry it like this until you learn how to carry it like this. But there are people who are so skilled at what they were doing. So to me, it was experimental, but it was cute trying to do this, but I couldn't do it. I worked there. Do you know, racism is real and discrimination is real, but it's not with everybody. But I remember there was that particular club, I guess because it's for the elite and the rich and everything. I'm there with my African accent, and you're serving these people, and we weren't being paid much. We were supposed to depend on tips. And so if you're not tipped, you know what that means. You're working, but you're broke. The one thing I loved about that is we were always given the leftover food. Not leftover from the clients, but leftover from the kitchen. You could take home food. But the highest tip that I ever got from there was 45 cents. I'll get a quarter, 25 cents, 30 cents, whatever. And you know what? I declined all of them because I'm not going to take coins as a tip. Yes, I may be poor, but I have a sense of pride. And you will not put me below where I already know I am. It was predominantly a white club. Midwestern part of the U.S. is mostly whites and stuff. And so most of actually, I didn't serve with any black person. I was the only black person there at the time. And then I'm from Africa. I have this accent and stuff. So yeah, someone would get $10, $15, $5, $2, $2, $5 was standard. But then now above that. Now I never got $1 one day. So whatever I was given, I left it at the table. I never took that tip. And at the end of that summer, I was like, I'm done with this. And so I moved to Texas. When I moved to Texas, again, that was another move of faith. I'm moving to Texas before I have my transfer letters at the college confirmed, which could quickly put me out of status with immigration. But I had called the office, the International Student Office, and they had assured me that they've processed. Again, that's a system that you can trust, unfortunately, to say that. I know our systems here, we can say one thing but mean quite the other. If I tell you your letter is ready, you know what that means. It is ready. How much do you have? Most of the places where we know, especially when you're dealing with people who at a vulnerable state, like I was in a vulnerable state as an international student. So I went there, I moved to Texas. With $3,050. That's between me and poverty. I was driving my little bitty car that could only go up to 85 miles per hour maximum, which could not even reach there because I guess the transmission system was needing. It was a red car too. My first car in the States was red. It was a Chevy Nova. So I put my suitcase that was my investment, which I brought from Kenya, my suitcase and my radio music system that I had bought, a Sony. It was a 51 CD changer, so I was doing well. So I put that into that little thing and drove for 8.5 hours to move from Kansas to Oklahoma to Texas. So here I am, I checked into a motel. It was around 5:30 in the morning. I checked into a motel that stunk. It was so stinky. It was cockroach infested and stuff. But that was all I could afford. was $19.99 per day. So I'm getting there around 5:30 in the morning. I'm like, at least I'll sleep. Before checkout time at noon, I can sleep and decide whether I'll change or I'll be there for a week. I've checked. A week it was about $159. Thought, I have $3,050. Maybe I can pay. If that 1 week, somehow, God, you have to show me where I'll be going next. I don't know whether I'll ever get a job here. I know the college will be more affordable. Again, it's 50% cheaper than what I have just left. But how will I? Where do I start from? How do I sustain my life before I run out of this money? The Bible says that the steps of a righteous man are ordered of the Lord. I'm not saying I'm righteous. I'm not saying I'm holy. But I do know when you depend on God and you don't depend on yourself or on people or on your own knowledge or other people's wits, I know God will not let you down. That I know, because I have seen him do it over and over and over again, especially in a foreign country where I don't have family and my life fully depends on him. So here I am. I checked in there, and a certain lady, she was a single mother. She was Kenyan. This was a Kenyan lady, and her name was Dorothy. And Dorothy heard about my story, that I have just moved from Kansas. I don't know anybody. I don't have family. I've checked into that stinky motel. It was just a street away from where she lived. And she had a 2-bedroom apartment. She had a 7-year-old daughter. She's like, okay, can she live with a single mother of a 7-year-old? If she can, I'll take her in. She didn't even know my character. I didn't know her character, but she's taking a risk. I'm taking a risk. And so I went and checked in. So around 10 o'clock, I got a message. She sent somebody to me. So somebody came to me, said, could you stay with a single mom? I'm like, my mom is single. What are you talking about? She has a 7-year-old daughter. I'm like, well, the question is, can she live with me, and can the daughter stand having somebody else in their home? And they say, yeah. So when I went, that little girl thought she's found a new babysitter. So I remember asking me, so do you know how to babysit? Today, that girl is a beautiful, beautifully married young mother of 2. She was so beautiful and she was so cute, asking me if I know how to babysit. I was like, I didn't know I was coming to babysit. But anyway, here I am. So that was the way I paid for my rent there, really. Just, giving back. You mutually help her. She doesn't have to pay a nanny while I'm there, right? So I stayed with her for about 2 months. That was September, October, November I moved. That time I had found a job and I had found an apartment. And so I moved from the village to a village. Now, my first apartment in America was in a place called Nandwa village. That was actually a village. But it was a beautiful place. And I felt great to finally have a sense of independence, a sense of, I feel like I'm living an adult life, not in a dormitory, But it wasn't easy. Now starting to pay rent, pay bills. I don't have furniture, but that didn't bother me. But it wasn't easy, but it didn't bother me. I was ready, like I said, I was always ready to take on whatever mountain that came my way. When I first settled in America, which was in the year 2000, it was just after the millennium, really. It was into the millennium. And it was a very new experience for me, all very new experience. There's some of the things that I learned in America that I had never heard about. For example, there's a big holiday, Thanksgiving holiday is a big holiday. Because I remember I had just moved into a new apartment. I had met this new family. It was a single mother. It was like everywhere I went, I was just surrounded by single mothers. I think my life was just meant to be a single mother, single mother, single mother. It was a single mother of twins that were 11 years old from Uganda. They were very, very hospitable. The kids drew me to their mother and we became friends. But we didn't know each other well enough to do this Thanksgiving thing together. And I didn't want to impose because, again, I didn't know her very well. But I remember at that time I worked for a company called CompUSA. And CompUSA, I was selling computers and working in the technical department. And I had a boss called Terry. And so she asked me, for me to know how big Thanksgiving was, for me, I had come from Kenya where in August, the church that I grew up, we did our Thanksgiving holiday in August. And Thanksgiving meant you bring everything you've harvested from your farms to the church. and we would recite scriptures and stuff, and then we would sing and whatever, and people would just go home and have a meal. It's a Thanksgiving. So I'm thinking, in America, they also do the same. It was something totally different. Terry asked me, my boss, so Rosie, they used to call me Rosie. So Rosie, what are you going to be doing for Thanksgiving? I said, what do you mean? I'll be doing laundry. I'm just going to be in the house doing laundry because I live alone. She said, who? You live alone? Yeah. So you're going to be doing laundry. And then how are you celebrating Thanksgiving? Because it's a day off. Actually, it's a long weekend day off because you go home. You're off on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I said, I'm just going to stay home, do laundry, maybe clean up, and just chill for the weekend. She's like, do you realize how big this holiday is in this country? I say, well, what does that mean? She's like, this is a big family holiday. And I cannot let you spend Thanksgiving alone in a foreign country. I'm thinking, how do I go to my boss's house for Thanksgiving? I still didn't understand what's the big deal, what's going to be happening. I asked her, what is it? What does it entail? She's like, no, it's a feast. You come and you will see. It's a feast. You come, have you ever eaten turkey meat? I had never eaten turkey. I didn't even know they were edible because I had never seen a turkey personally. I had known about them, read about it, but I didn't know anything about it. So the Thanksgiving day, I did start my laundry a little bit, did a little bit of laundry. It was raining, so I thought about canceling that invitation and just not going. But then I thought it might not be very polite, especially this my boss. How will I face her at work on Monday? So I braved the weather and the roads. I mean, they're huge and slippery and whatever. It's my first time going to someone's home following a map, and we didn't have GPS. Like, unless you had bought the GPS gadget, I'd have to follow something called MapQuest. I don't know if any of you remembers when we used to have to print, the directions. I printed, and then I had to put it here. I'm driving, trying to pay attention and reading. In half a mile, you have to project how long is half a mile. I know kilometers, I don't know miles. And my goodness, that was quite an experience. I always like to say I learned a lot more in America outside a classroom than what I learned in a classroom. I went to study IT in a classroom, but I learned a lot about life, about the culture, about so much outside the classroom. So I drove and managed. She lived off of Highway 183 East, which boom, 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 is busy. And if you don't know where you're exiting, you're on the far left lane and you should be exiting on the right, then you're 4 lanes off. You have to go where that road goes. And I know I'm new, I don't know where I'm going. So somehow I managed to stay to the far right. I got that right. I drove to Terry's house and I found her family had been there. It's a huge thing where family comes together, actually more than Christmas. And so I went, found her family is there, eagerly waiting for Rosemary because they cannot start the celebrations until I get there because it's a family thing. So I am being adopted as part of that family. And for them to eat before me coming, it's rude. It wouldn't feel. So it was a special moment. And even though I don't know where Terry is, after I left that job, we didn't stay in touch. And I don't know, it's hard to keep in touch with everybody that you've met along the way. But I must say, that woman gave me a beautiful family experience at a time when I was so homesick in a foreign country. Of course, I had met Africans, but at the time of that Thanksgiving, there had been a little bit of fallout. Like I said earlier in my story, many times you meet people, and they're nice to you. They're excited about meeting you or whatever. But sometimes if you're too ambitious, you can actually rub people off the wrong way. And looking back, I think that was the case for me. It's like I kind of rubbed people off the wrong way with my ambition. I was too ambitious. And when I would tell people stories of how I worked my way from Kenya to pay my way to America, and I am paying myself my fees for a full-time, study program, it didn't sit well with many people who knew that they had dropped out or their families had dropped out or they were struggling and why are you in America when you were doing so well in Kenya? They didn't understand. So it didn't sit very well. And that's how and why I ended up in an American family for Thanksgiving. So we finished that and working in this computer company. Again, I brought my street skills to America. And the fact that I even had an idea or two about how technology works was so intriguing to the American population, they wanted me to work on their computers. My bosses wanted me to be the one to advise the clients on what to buy, why to buy, whatever. I became so good at it. I I used my bread selling skills. This time they worked. I would sell computers, and I became like, there was a wall of fame. It was called, the wall of fame was called Whatever It Takes. So if you've exceeded the expectations of the customers and of your employer, you are there for that month. I was there almost every month, consecutively, consistently. Until now, clients would come and say, who is this black girl who is always on this wall? She's the one I want to talk to for my computer needs. So I became popular like that. And by extension, these clients started asking me if I could help them, either train them at their homes on their computers, or come and help repair their computers at home. It's cheaper than going to corporate rates. So what they would pay for diagnosis is what I would charge just for basic repairs. So I'm not charging diagnosis and repairs. I'm just charging a flat fee of $100. Now, if you need to buy parts, I will sell you the parts with a markup, a margin, and then you still pay me the $100 for labor. And then training, I started training. In fact, I remember one of my first clients there was an old white guy. He's since rested. I know his name is Cloud. He was a client. He was my client at the store. He became my personal training client, and he became a friend, who even eventually met my family as a friend. And so may he rest in peace. Cloud was a nice guy. But when he first came to the store, he wasn't a nice guy. He was not pleasant. And that was one of, I would say, my first racist experiences in my face. He came and he actually called me the N-word at the store. But again, people just, what they're used to is what they're used to. They're not used to dealing with foreigners, Africans and stuff. So he didn't know any better. I don't know if he did or he didn't, but he was a nice guy. So that is erased. I never harbored any hard feelings. He came to buy a computer, I've never forgotten. And I happened to be the one at the station where he was buying, and I'm trying to advise him on the computer to buy. People are retired, they have dollars, thousands of dollars to just pour into a computer. But I looked at him and I'm like, this is a guy who is I think he was in his late 60s or early 70s. And he was in his early 70s. And I asked him, what is the computer for? Don't ask me those damn questions. And he used the N-word. Ooh, I shook. I said, okay, I'm just trying to help you. You still have to be kind and polite towards a client. I wasn't going to argue. I said, I'm just trying to help you to understand your needs so I can help you pick the right one, so you don't pick a high-end computer, pay so much. Well, money is not my problem, young lady. I just want this computer here and da-da-da-da-da. And so the one that he wanted was $3,339. That's like almost $3,500 for a computer. It was a Gateway brand. And a printer. He wanted a printer that's all-in-one, a printer, scanner, photocopier in one. And I said, okay, well, I was just trying to help you. He's like, and first of all, you're very expensive and stuff. I worked for CompUSA. We had a competitor at that time called Fry's and another one called Best Buy. So he goes, Best Buy has this computer, the same computer, for much less than that. I think he said they were selling it for $29.99. I say, well, our policy was, if you can go get it there at that price, and they actually have it in stock, not just that they have a sticker. If they have it in stock, you can come, we will match that price. But when you think about it, why would anyone want to drive back for you to match a price? They would just buy it from there, right? So he went there. Yes, their sale was $29.99, but they didn't have it in stock. So he had to come back here and pay this full price of $33.39 and the printer. So when he came back, even though he was pissed off at me because I'm trying to educate him on computers and I'm trying to tell him to buy cheaper and he doesn't want to buy cheaper, he came back and I was attending to another customer. Around that time was after I'd already had a good experience with Terry. Then here is a terrible experience with Cloud. And I remember he came back and found somebody was wanting to attend to him. And he's like, no, I'm going to wait for that young lady. He waited for me. I still see him to this day with his big Godfather hat. He came and said, young lady, well, first of all, I must apologize for the way I treated you, the way I talked to you. That was absolutely inappropriate. I apologize. I told him, that's all right, sir. How may I help you? Well, I went to Best Buy. They don't have this unit in stock. And so I just come back and said, so tell me, what can this do? So I talked to him. He finally said, yeah, I'd like to buy that and that printer. Money is not a problem to him. I say, okay, would you like to buy extended warranty? You know, most electronics would come with a 1-year warranty. So for us, selling extended warranty was part of our sales, responsibility to increase sales while also securing this equipment for the client. But really it was for sales, revenue generation. You had to have a skill to sell that because anybody buying a computer already know it comes with factory warranty for at least 1 year. So after that, anything could happen, or it might not happen. Nothing might happen. You know, you might have it even for 2-3 years without any problem. But we're trying to push this so that when you buy a peace of mind. How you present it to the customer is a different story. So I tell him about that. He's nearly slapped me. He says, I am not buying no damn warranty. You know, my wife got fired for trying to sell extended warranties at Sears and whatever. I'm not buying that. Now, can you park my computer? And this, I'm not here. Young lady, I'm not talking about warranty. I'm like, yes, sir, I understand. Now we are trying to see, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, even if they're rude. Yeah, unless now they become violent, of course. So you have to be calm. Service is not an easy thing. So I said, okay, but can I ask you a question? Now, the package I was trying to sell him was the most expensive, platinum. Now that comes with home service, home repairs, a loan equipment. If yours breaks down and we have to repair because you're extended warranty, but we give you another one while you're. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer. So I said, first of all, let me ask you something. Do you realize that when you buy this, we actually give you free training, but you have to go for the classes 3 weeks after purchase? And then we give you a loaner piece of equipment. If yours breaks down, we could come and fix it. We'll send a technician to your house. If it's not fixable there, he will come back to the store with it and he'll bring you a loaner equipment that you could use. So your operations are not interfered with, interrupted. Well, yeah, but now he's beginning to kind of think, I don't think about, well, can I think about it? You know, how many? I said, well, you have to think about it within 3 days. And so then I said, let me ask you something. Who's going to install the equipment when you buy? Well, I don't know. I guess it's just me. I said, do you know how to install it? Do you know how to connect this and this and that? Who do you live with? I live with my dog. One dog that had a blind eye. I said, so who's going to set this up? I guess I don't know. Can you do that for me? I said, yes, I could, but as a store, see, the plan I'm trying to sell you, if you buy that plan, we deliver the equipment to your house. We set it up for you, everything. And the technician will show you the basic operations and everything. And then after that, you have all this peace of mind for 3 years. Anything happens, we come pick it up or come fix it there. You never have to carry a computer. And besides, you have free training. Well, I guess. So that's how he bought this plan. And from there, he started to believe in me. Now, he missed the training, the free training in 3 weeks. He did not go for it. He was excited about his new toy. Then 3 weeks elapsed. He calls me, I think, about 2 months. Can I still? I say, no, sir. It was 3 weeks. Well, can you train me? Then he hired me now to train him on the weekend. 2 hours on Saturday, 2 hours on Sunday. $50 an hour. So every weekend, I would make at least $200. So my rent was paid from just my weekend 2-hour gigs. And that's just one isolated stories of how I ended up making money and supplementing my little income and, you know, my budget that was, you know, climbing and I don't know who to talk to or whatever. And meanwhile, I was there now beginning to settle into the country, you know, my career. I fast forward, I went on and graduated with my degree. But by the time I was graduating, I moved from that company and I went to work for Dell Computers. Dell Computers, again, gave me a huge exposure into the software. I was very conversant with the hardware, networking and all that, but I wasn't very good in software. When Dell hired me, when they interviewed me, I was pretty good in these areas, but they needed software technicians. But I was like, I don't know. They say, you look very trainable. And, you know, with the exposure and experience you have, we will just a little bit of training in you. And for sure, And so I picked up and I worked for Dell Computers for a while. When I was moving from Dell Computers, I went into another company, still in technology, but it was in communications. It was, at the time, it was probably the leading supplier or provider of telecommunications networks. It was called Verizon, former GTE Verizon, and I went to work there in operations department. So by the time I was going there, I was this instability of changing jobs here, changing jobs, the other stuff. And then again, my lifestyle has changed. I'm supporting family at home. I'm paying bills and this, and the real American life had caught up with me.